The fluorescent lights above flickered softly as Nora Jameson walked through the hallway of St. Vincent's private hospital. Her shoes made no sound on the polished floors, but something in the air felt unusually loud, like the day was holding its breath. She had worked here for nearly 2 years, but today the air felt heavier. When the call from Dr. Everett's office came, it was abrupt, emotionless, and unexpected. "Nurse Jameson, Dr. Everett would like to see you." Now, she'd barely hung up before her pulse quickened. Had she done something wrong? Was someone in trouble? She found herself standing before the dark wooden door at the end of the corridor. It towered over her, polished, silent, uninviting. She hesitated only a second before knocking. "Come in." His voice, as always, was steady and unreadable. Dr. Samuel Everett stood near the window, staring at the skyline like it had wronged him. Hands behind his back, spine straight. The scent of antiseptic mixed with expensive leather hung in the air. His office looked more like a courtroom than a place of healing. "Nora," he said finally, not turning, "we have a patient. Room 903. She nodded, trying to appear composed. "What's the case?" He turned then, his gaze sharp but unreadable. "This assignment isn't ordinary. It's not a rotating shift. It's not a routine. And it's not for the weak-hearted." That made her pause. He walked slowly to his desk, placed a thick file on it with 2 fingers. "Eli Morgan," he said. "You've heard the name." Nora frowned. The name rang like a bell long buried. Then her breath caught. Eli Morgan, the youngest billionaire in the city. The tech mogul with eyes colder than steel and a voice sharper than glass. He'd disappeared from the public eye almost a year ago. Rumors, whispers, but no confirmation. Until now. She opened the file. The photo hit her first, black and white, grainy, violent. A sports car twisted beyond recognition, mangled metal torn open like paper. Then the report. Accident, coma, no family contact except legal representatives. Vital signs stable. Unresponsive for 11 months. "Why me?" she asked softly. Dr. Everett studied her face. "Because I think you won't just do your job. I think you'll care." She swallowed, hard. He was asking her to care for a man the world had already given up on. But before she could think about it any further, she nodded. "I'll take it." Room 903 was nothing like the other rooms in the hospital. It was a private suite, tucked away at the top floor, far from the noise of visitors or the daily hum of routine. The walls were warm oak. The lighting was soft. There were fresh flowers in a vase near the window, even though no one ever came to see them. And in the center of it all was him. Eli Morgan lay still beneath crisp white sheets. Tubes, monitors, silent machines surrounded him like sentinels. His face was calm, pale, almost too beautiful to be real. His features held the kind of quiet intensity that could both frighten and pull someone in. Even unconscious, there was something about him that whispered danger and sadness. Nora stepped closer. There was a warmth in the air she hadn't expected. She reached for the basin of warm water, dipped the cloth in, and hesitated. Then, gently, she pressed it to his skin. A chill ran down her spine, not from fear, but from something she couldn't name, a kind of knowing, as if, deep inside the silence, someone had heard her, as if, somehow, he knew she was there. She whispered, almost to herself, "You don't get a say in this, do you?" Silence, I'll take that as a no. She smiled, just barely, and kept going. The days began to blend. Morning and night she came. She bathed him, checked his IV, changed his linens, and then she began to talk. It wasn't planned. It just started. A thought here, a story there. You should see the cafeteria food. I don't think even a billionaire could stomach it. No response, but she didn't stop. I don't know why I'm talking to you. Maybe I just like the sound of my own voice. Silence, or maybe you're listening. That idea made her heart skip, and somehow it stayed with her. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the large windows, she began her usual routine. Her hands moved gently across his chest, the cloth warm, her touch careful. "You know," she murmured, "I read that people in comas can still hear, so maybe you're just pretending. Best listener I've ever had." She laughed softly, shaking her head. Then it happened. A twitch, her breath caught. Had she imagined it? She stared at his hand, motionless. She let out a nervous laugh. "I'm losing it." But over the next few days, it happened again. Fingers shifting slightly, a muscle flexing, a hand that seemed to respond to her touch. She told Dr. Everett. It could be reflex, he warned. Don't get ahead of yourself. But Nora couldn't shake the feeling. Something was happening. The tests confirmed it. Increased brain activity. Small, subtle, but undeniable. She sat by his bed that night, watching his face as she whispered, "You hear me, don't you?" He didn't move, but something in her gut told her she wasn't alone anymore. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice like sharing a secret. "I don't know who you were before the accident. I don't know what people said about you. But whoever you were, you're not alone now." The silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt full, alive, waiting. And then one morning, it happened. Routine, ordinary, nothing out of place, until his fingers wrapped around her wrist. Not tight, not strong, just there. She froze. Her heart slammed into her chest. Her eyes shot to his. They were open, blue, deep, confused, but awake. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then the monitor screamed, and everything changed. For the first time in nearly a year, Eli Morgan's eyes were open. Nora couldn't move. His fingers, weak and trembling, still held onto her wrist. Not tightly, but deliberately. Like he was reaching through layers of silence to find something familiar. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. He blinked, slowly. His eyes darted around the room, unfocused, disoriented. Then he whispered something, barely audible, rough like sandpaper. "Company." Nora stumbled back. The water basin slipped from her hand. crashing to the floor in a wave of white and silver. She slammed the emergency button. Alarms blared. Footsteps thundered. Within seconds, the room was flooded with voices, with urgency, with disbelief. What happened? Dr. Everett demanded, storming in. He grabbed my hand, Nora gasped, still staring at Eli. He opened his eyes. He spoke. He's awake. The machines beeped louder, faster. Nurses swarmed. Flashlights checked his pupils. Words flew. But Eli, he kept looking at her, even through the chaos. Even as doctors circled him like he was a miracle they didn't understand. She stepped forward. Her voice trembled. Eli, do you know where you are? He blinked slowly. The corners of his brows pulled together. Then his hand moved again, reaching for hers. Deliberate, fragile, but certain. He held on. Dr. Everett watched, stunned. Eli, he said gently, do you know who this is? A long silence followed. Then Eli murmured, I don't know, but I feel like I should. A chill went down Nora's spine, because somehow that felt more powerful than if he had remembered everything. The days that followed were unlike anything the hospital had seen. News didn't spread to the press, yet Dr. Everett kept it tightly contained. But within these walls, whispers flew like wildfire. The billionaire in room 903 had woken up, and he only responded to the nurse no one had expected to matter. Physical therapy started quickly. Eli's body had grown stiff, his muscles untrained. But his mind, though clouded, was working. He didn't remember the accident, not the car, not the bridge, not the moment the world had turned upside down. Just fragments, feelings, and her voice. Nora stayed with him, every step, every moment. She watched him relearn how to sit up, how to drink from a glass, how to say his own name without pain. He didn't speak often, but when he did, it was usually to her. I heard you, he said one afternoon, his voice hoarse but stronger than before. Nora looked up, startled. When I was asleep, you talked to me every day. She froze. 1,000 emotions flooded her. Doubt, hope, something deeper. You remember? No, he admitted. Not clearly, but I felt it, like a rope pulling me back to the surface. And it had your voice. She swallowed the lump in her throat. I didn't think you could hear me. I didn't think I could either. Until I woke up, and the first thing I wanted to find was you. The room was silent, but it wasn't empty. Something real was growing here. One night, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Nora lingered after her shift. Eli sat in his bed, upright now, pale but alert. His eyes followed her as she moved about the room, tidying small things that didn't need tidying. You don't have to stay, he said, I know. Then why do you? She paused. I guess because I don't want you to wake up alone again. His expression softened. Thank you. She turned to leave. Nora, he said, stopping her. Yeah, don't go too far. She smiled just barely. I won't. But not all was calm. As Eli's body regained strength, his mind began to stir with fragments, vague images, flashbacks without faces, sounds without source. One night, he woke up gasping. Nora rushed in. "It's okay," she said, hands gently on his shoulders. "You're safe." But his eyes were wide, wild. There were headlights and rain and... He cut off, confused, trembling. "Something was wrong," he whispered. "I felt chased." Later that week, Dr. Everett pressed him during a therapy session. "What's the last thing you remember, Eli?" He closed his eyes. Pain crossed his features. "Nothing clear, just danger." "I felt danger." "It's common," Everett said, noting things down. "Trauma protects the mind by hiding the worst memories." But Nora, standing in the corner, felt something else. A chill she couldn't shake. That night, after everyone had gone, she sat in the hospital archives. She pulled his file, read every word, and then she saw it. A detail she'd missed before. Brake failure. Not natural wear. Tampered. Her hands went cold. This wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to kill Eli Morgan, and they might try again. The silence of the hospital was different now. It wasn't peaceful. It was thick, waiting, like the air before a storm. Room 903 no longer held just a man recovering from a coma. It held questions, shadows, and now a truth that neither Nora nor Eli could unsee. Nora sat at the edge of his bed, the light from the lamp casting soft golden lines across her face. She had barely slept. The document she held trembled slightly in her hand, not because of the paper, but because of what it revealed. "The brakes were tampered with," she said again, her voice soft but steady. Eli didn't flinch. He sat still, staring at a fixed point on the floor. "I had a feeling," he said finally. "When?" she asked. He turned toward her. His eyes were clear, no longer the dazed ocean blue from his first days awake. "The night I remembered the headlights, the rain, the moment I tried to hit the brakes and nothing happened. That moment came back in a flash, and I knew." The room felt colder now. "They wanted you dead," she whispered. Eli exhaled, closing his eyes for a moment. "And they nearly succeeded." He paused, then looked up. "We have to find out who. I need to know." Nora nodded. "We'll start with your company. Any financial movement, unusual behavior, people with access to your car, your schedule." Eli gave a small, grim smile. "You know this isn't your job anymore, right?" She smiled back. "It stopped being just a job a long time ago." That night, while most of the city slept, Nora and Eli stayed up. A laptop balanced on the bed tray, spreadsheets and logs glowing across the screen. She brought him soup. He brought her old passwords, hidden documents, and encrypted email archives. Line by line, they searched. Then Nora found it. A wire transfer. Large, clean, hidden under layers of corporate accounting. Sent 2 days before the crash. The recipient, a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. She dug deeper. Within an hour, she linked the shell to a known name in the criminal underworld, a man famous for orchestrating accidents that looked clean but weren't. Nora's heart began to race. "Who sent it?" Eli asked, eyes narrowed. Nora clicked and froze. "Victor," she whispered. Eli blinked. "Victor Morgan," she said again, voice louder this time. Your brother. The silence that followed was unbearable. Eli leaned back, breathing slowly, like trying to keep something inside from breaking. He's always hated me, Eli said, voice quiet. Said I was the golden boy, that everything came too easy to me. He was our father's second son, always second. Nora swallowed hard, but to try and kill you, I never thought he'd actually go that far. His jaw clenched. I didn't think I mattered enough to him, not enough to destroy. His fists closed tightly, shaking. I trusted him. I left the company in his hands while I was recovering. I gave him everything I had. Nora reached for him. Her hand found his, and she didn't say anything. She just stayed there, present, real. They planned it quietly. Eli reached out to one of his old legal advisors, discreetly, carefully. Then he arranged a meeting, just the three of them, at the Morgan estate. Nora didn't want to go at first, but Eli insisted. I want you there, he said. Not just because I trust you, but because I need someone in the room who sees things clearly. So they went. The estate was darker than she expected, grand, but cold. The study smelled of old leather and whiskey. A fire crackled in the corner, more for show than warmth. Victor sat in a tall chair, legs crossed, glass in hand. He looked surprised to see them. Look who's walking again, he said, smirking. Eli didn't return the expression. I know what you did. Victor sipped his drink. You'll have to be more specific. You tried to kill me. The smirk faded. I found the wire transfer, Eli continued, to a man who specializes in staged accidents, sent from a company tied to you. Victor's eyes flashed, just for a second. You've been digging, he said. I had to, Eli replied. I didn't remember everything, but I remembered enough. And then Nora helped me see the rest. Victor's jaw tensed. That nurse. She's the reason I'm alive. Victor stood, walked slowly toward the window. It was never supposed to happen like this. Then how was it supposed to happen? Eli asked, voice rising. Was I supposed to die on that road? Be out of your way for good? Victor turned. For a moment, his expression was raw. Yes, Nora gasped. I was tired, Victor said, of always being in your shadow, of watching you get everything while I got scraps. You built an empire and left me behind. I offered you a seat beside me. You offered me silence, Victor spat. Your silence, your control, your crumbs. So I made a choice. Eli's eyes narrowed. A choice that ends today. Suddenly, the door burst open. 2 officers stepped inside. Victor's face paled. Victor Morgan, one of them said. You are under arrest for attempted murder. Victor turned to Eli, furious. You set me up. Eli's voice was calm. No, brother, you set yourself up. As they dragged Victor out, he shouted curses, none of which landed. The door closed behind him with a final, echoing thud. Eli stood motionless. Nora stepped beside him, placing a hand on his arm. It's over, she said. He didn't look at her. Not quite. He turned, but it's the beginning of something else. That night, they didn't go back to the hospital. Instead, they walked. The city was quiet. The air was cool. They didn't say much, until Eli finally whispered, You saved me. Nora looked up at him. No, she said, you fought to live. I was just there. That's what saved me. They stopped beneath a streetlight. Eli took her hand. I don't know what happens next, he said, but I know I don't want to go through it alone. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was walking beside a patient or even a billionaire. She was walking beside a man who had come back from the edge of death, a man who had chosen to live and chosen her. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window of room 903, bathing everything in a soft golden haze. It felt different now. The storm had passed. Victor was gone. Justice had been served. But Nora could tell this wasn't peace. Not yet. It was the quiet breath before something new began. Eli sat upright in bed, staring at the skyline as if trying to memorize it. His hands were clasped together, but his knuckles weren't white anymore. "How do you feel?" she asked. He turned, and for the first time in days, he smiled, not forced, not pained, just simple, honest, like I've been given another chance, he said, and I don't want to waste it. Rehabilitation became his new battlefield. Every morning started with stretches that made his muscles scream. Every afternoon was a war between body and mind, between what he remembered being capable of and what he could barely manage now. The first time he tried to stand on his own, his legs shook so violently, Nora thought he might fall flat. But he didn't. He gritted his teeth and stood, not for long, but he did. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered, steadying him. His voice cracked with exhaustion. "Only because you believe I am." Over the next few weeks, something changed in how the staff treated him, not just as a miracle case, but as a man who refused to give up. And the reason was clear. Every time he faltered, Nora was there, with a steady hand, a quiet word, or sometimes just silence, but never absence. One afternoon, after an especially difficult session, Nora brought him out to the hospital garden. It was quiet, breezy, filled with scent of herbs and soft flowers. "Sit," she said, patting the stone bench. He lowered himself slowly, his breath heavy. "You look like someone who's run a marathon," she teased. He let out a breathless laugh. "It feels like I've run 3. There was silence for a while. Then he said, "I used to think strength meant winning, leading, controlling everything." She tilted her head, listening. "But now I think strength might be something quieter, something like staying." She looked at him, "Like you did that evening after dinner." Nora found him in the hallway outside his room, standing with a cane and looking out the window. He didn't say anything as she approached. He just reached for her hand, and when their fingers intertwined, it didn't feel like a gesture of need. It felt like a promise. Later that week, Eli received word from the board of Carter Morgan Industries. They wanted to meet, to discuss reinstatement, to see if he was fit to return. Nora watched him as he read the email. "I don't know if I want it back," he said, almost to himself. "You built it," she said gently. "And it nearly cost me everything," he replied. She stepped closer. "Maybe you're not meant to take it back the same way. Maybe this time you lead differently." He looked at her. "You really think I can?" "I think you already are. The board meeting was tense. Eli entered slowly, walking with quiet confidence and a cane. The room fell silent. Some of the executives looked uncomfortable, some surprised, a few clearly displeased. "I know why you're worried," Eli began. "You think I'm weak, damaged, vulnerable." He paused, meeting every gaze. "I am." Silence. "I was in a coma for nearly a year. I lost my strength, my memory, my sense of direction. But what I didn't lose was my ability to lead. Because leadership isn't just about force. It's about listening, adapting, choosing people you trust." He turned toward Nora, who stood quietly by the door. "And I've learned more in these last few months about humanity, patience, and resilience than I ever did behind this desk." The room shifted, faces changed, and for the first time, they didn't see him as a broken king. They saw a man reborn. That night, Eli and Nora sat on the rooftop of the estate. The city lights shimmered like stars. He turned to her, eyes soft. "I don't want to go back to who I was." "You're not," she said. He nodded. "And I don't want to lose this, what we've become." She smiled gently. "You won't?" He hesitated, then leaned in closer. "I don't think I fell in love with you after I woke up." Her breath caught. "I think it happened while I was still asleep." A pause, your voice, your touch, your presence. It was the only thing I could feel in the dark. Her eyes shimmered. He reached for her hand. "And now that I have you, I don't ever want to let go." The air on the rooftop of the Morgan estate was soft and golden, touched by the last light of the setting sun. Nora stood at the edge, her hair dancing with the breeze, eyes tracing the outline of the city below. She didn't know he was watching her. Eli stepped closer, slow and sure, no longer needing a cane. His steps weren't perfect, but they were his, earned, reclaimed. He paused behind her, taking in the view and her. "It's beautiful up here," she said softly, not turning. "Not as beautiful as you," he replied, his voice quiet. She smiled, half teasing, half shy. "Smooth, Morgan, very smooth." But the light in his eyes changed then, something deeper, more certain, and she felt it. When she turned around, the words she had were caught in her throat. He was on one knee. The velvet box in his hand glowed against the dusk, and in it a single ring, elegant, quiet, breathtaking. But it wasn't the diamond that took her breath. It was him. It was his voice, trembling with a truth he could no longer hold back. "Nora, you didn't just take care of me. You brought me back to life." She blinked, tears already forming. "Before you, I had everything: money, power, control. But I was hollow, lost. And when the world gave up on me, you stayed." He swallowed, his voice cracking. "You were the only voice in the dark, the only hand I felt. And I don't want to live another day without you in it." He lifted the ring. "Nora Jameson, will you marry me?" She covered her mouth, the answer already in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, and when he rose to hold her, it was as if the city disappeared. There was no past, no accident, no coma. Only this moment, only love. The wedding was held in the garden of the Morgan estate. What once felt like a fortress of solitude had become a place of new beginnings. White roses lined the pathways. Lanterns swayed gently in the breeze. Music floated like wind through the trees. Nora stood at the top of the aisle, her dress simple, timeless. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with clarity. And down at the end, Eli waited, no longer a man trapped in silence, but one who had fought his way back to her, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. When they met at the altar, he took her hands in his and whispered, "You saved me." And she answered through tears, "You chose to live." Their vows were quiet, sacred, spoken not just to each other, but to the road that had carried them here. A road filled with darkness, betrayal, pain, and the miracle of healing. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." When their lips met, the world didn't cheer. It exhaled. Weeks passed, then months. The media buzz faded. The boardroom noise quieted. The hospital became just a place they once knew. Now their lives were filled with sunlit breakfasts, evening walks, and quiet moments that felt like answers to questions they hadn't dared to ask. One afternoon, Eli stood behind Nora as she read in the garden. He wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "You know," he murmured, "I used to think love was just a luxury." She closed the book, waited, but now I know. It's the only thing worth fighting for. She turned in his arms, kissed his cheek. "And it found you when you couldn't even open your eyes," she whispered. He nodded. "And now," he said, voice low and full, "I will spend the rest of my life proving that I heard every word you said." Their hands intertwined, not with desperation, but peace. As the wind danced through the roses and the light bathed them in gold, one thing was clear: they had survived the worst.